Hey, you're through the Books Boys. You got Dean and PJ on the line. Who's calling?
Hello there.
Hey, this is and Daniel. I think you guys read my
Wow,
book or something like that.
Yeah, we were
that's
literally
it.
just talking about it. Yeah, burn the city
That's
to
a
the ground.
crazy. That's a crazy coincidence. It's amazing that you're calling. That is mad.
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Just got done with the Christmas holiday. Pretty busy, pretty hectic. But I'm doing okay
Okay,
today.
okay,
Got the day off. It's all good.
awesome.
Awesome. So I read your book. I read Burn the City to the Ground. Now tell me, this is your second book, right?
Yeah. It's my second book. My first book is called Corners Untouched by Madness.
Nice.
Both books were kind of critically praised. I mean, I'm not a millionaire, obviously my books aren't world famous, but
Mhm.
but uh both books did really well. The new book especially is doing well in Minneapolis and
Right.
sort of in greater Minnesota, in the United States.
Cool.
So and that's where the books take place. So
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
um yeah.
Wow. So it's resonating with the crowd. You maybe did you write it for did you write it for this particular crowd, or were you thinking that maybe the book could expand nationwide or international?
Well, I think when you write a book, though, the plan is usually for it to get as popular as possible. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's a story about the pandemic and riots in Minnesota. Well, leading up to that, that's kind of the climax.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so people are in, especially in Minnesota, are interested in the story, um just because
Right.
it's sort of like a story about what's been going on here,
Yeah. It's very
and
relevant.
yeah, and George Floyd is mentioned in it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I knew who he was. I volunteered at the shelter he was working at. um so
Wow.
even though he's not like a huge part of the story, it's something that's kind of going on in the background, and then also like when
Mm.
he is murdered, like kind of how my quadriplegic client and I, that the story is about, how we react to sort of like his death and stuff like that. so
Yeah.
Mm.
so people are really interested in hearing stories like that right now, and there aren't a lot right now. So
Mm.
so I mean, I really hope that more people come forward and write sort of about these topics.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It touches on the George Floyd stuff. It touches on COVID a bit towards the end as well. So we've got the story about Daniel and everything, and his patient, as you say, Sam. But then we do bring in a few different, current affairs issues, and that was quite an interesting take, because it's not a pure nonfiction book either. It is a novel, but we just bring in a lot of elements. And I wanted to ask you how much of this is real, how much of this is based on real events with yourself.
um when you write, like, actually, that's probably the question that I get the most when people when
Mm,
people are talking to me about this. um but when you write a memoir, it's so hard to, like, it's never going to be real. It's
Mm-hmm.
never going to be reality, because you're not going to remember conversations. You're not really going to remember. um I find the hardest thing is like the
Mm-hmm.
order of events, and
Okay.
mhm.
and how things happen, and you kind of want to set things up where it tells like a cohesive story, and
Mm-hmm.
where there's like a beginning and end. And
Yeah.
reality just doesn't really organize itself in that way all the time. Um so I would say it's like, probably 80% exactly
Oh,
what
nice.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there's a lot of like vulnerable adults, disabled people, so a lot of it has changed, just to protect them, their identities and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Totally.
um but yeah, I mean, it's like mostly true. I mean, it's not like I just made the whole thing up.
Mm,
There are certain plot devices that I use to kind of move the story along. some of the conversations in the book I kind of wanted to use to sort of steer the narrative of the story, just to touch on specific talking points that I felt were relevant. I feel like the whole idea of memoir is to share with the readership what you know, but do it in a way where they don't have to do the work that you had to do. So
Yeah, totally.
And, for a memoir, like it does, it flows well. It's easy to read. It reads like a novel. It reads like a story that you can easily dip into. I was able to read it in, I think, 2 days, because I just, I wanted to find out what was happening, and I found it very accessible to read, which is good. And it's good to know that a lot of it is real. So I wanted to ask you then, right near the beginning, Daniel, I guess, essentially yourself, first client he's given dies day one. Was that something that was like really difficult to deal with and to process?
Yeah, it's like that happened day one in the book, but that actually happened a little later in my caregiving career. But it was so significant to me because it was the first client that I had that passed away. So I just kind of wanted to illustrate, like, some people that are disabled don't have any family or friends or anyone visiting them. And their caregivers are the only people that are really like surrounding them. So that was a very true sort of part of the book that actually happened. That's exactly how it happened, but it wasn't like the first experience that I had. I just kind of put it in there like that to sort of demonstrate that moving into my client and caring for her, that some people don't have anybody, and they don't have support systems, they don't have family or friends coming to visit them. And that's sort of how the Samantha character in my book was, because she alienated everybody. So I just wanted to kind of have a setup where, this is kind of normal for people for disabled people to be in this situation where, and I don't really say that about the client that dies in the beginning of the book. But that was very much like his story too, was that he alienated everybody in his life, and then no one wanted to visit him. And that's just the frustration of being disabled and not, especially like not being able to move your body if you have like a traumatic brain injury or whatever it is. People tend to shy away from that, and that's sort of why I use that experience to kind of like open up the story, is just to show, and that's another example of how I sort of use the memoir to kind of narrate and kind of mold the story to how I wanted people to perceive it. Because that actually happened later in my career as a caregiver. So yeah, that was real. That was all real, but it just didn't happen like at that time.
Exactly at that time. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So Sam is a great character because she's always calling Daniel frat boy and shouting at him and all this kind of stuff. And I think she's a very, very likable character once you kind of peel off that rough exterior of mild abuse. Once she kind of gets away from that.
Yeah. I think, everybody reacts to her differently, because some people think she's like the antagonist of the book, and other people, like, I wanted to write her character in a way that would make people sympathetic to her, because she just doesn't have a filter. I mean, she's not a bad person. She's not like, I don't think she's necessarily mean to Daniel in the book. She can seem very angry and disgruntled, but she just wants like to be taken care of properly, and especially like my character is not doing his job correctly. So it's like, and I think a lot of people perceive that as her sort of ragging on Daniel as being mean to him. but I mean, being a quadriplegic is awful. It's very frustrating. It's very maddening. It's maddening. And I really wanted to show like sort of the human side of that, and how she kind of um copes with it, and the way that she copes with it is being very inappropriate and swearing and
A
telling
lot of
dirty
swearing, a lot of
jokes.
sex stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very much like I didn't want her to be an antagonist in the book. Some people perceive her as the antagonist. I wanted to show people why she was so angry. And
Yeah.
even in the end, as things are becoming more difficult between me and her, and our relationship is becoming more toxic, it's not like we didn't care about each other. It's not like she didn't care about me. It's just, that's just how it is. It's like living with a roommate that you wanna get along with, you wanna care about, but there's just too many difficulties and frustrations, and it's not like you hate the person, but I wanted her to be like more of a sympathetic character. And I'm kind of discouraged because a lot of people are like, oh, she's the antagonist, like she's a jerk to you, like she's the bad guy. But that's not really how I really wanted to like write the book, with her as sort of like this aggressor, but that's just how people perceive it, I guess.
Interesting. And it's very brave of you to be well, how much is biography, how much is autobiography? We can guess, I suppose,
We
but it seems
support
to be very,
80%.
yeah, I mean, it seems very that very naked, the book, so that's very brave of you.
Yeah.
Was it your intention to talk about yourself and calling the character Daniel? Were you open to the idea? Is it supposed to be very obvious that it's you, or were you trying to sometimes hide some maybe embarrassing facts to yourself?
Well, and Daniel is a pen name. So it's all sort of meant to like kind of mask like who I am a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you read my first book is even more raw and embarrassing and gritty and naked in a lot of ways. So my first book is probably even more so like stuff that I even say right in the beginning, it's like, this is all the stuff I wouldn't want a stranger to know about me, you know?
Yes.
Yeah,
It
but
says
here it
that
is
right in the
for
beginning of my
thousands
first book.
of strangers.
Yeah. So that's just how I write. I mean, I just write about, I'm honest about what happened to me, and I write about some pretty hard topics, and I just like, I have the like privilege and the also the sort of bad luck to actually live a life that was really dramatic and worth writing about. It's both a blessing and a curse, but that's just how it is. I think like 90% of writing is just having something to say.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like you have a lot to say. There's one last little thread I wanted to pull, which is the part where Sam. So she always calls Daniel Dad, right? Because he's kind of strict and she's a bit wild and a bit crazy, and he's a bit more level-headed. There's the part where he finds that she's got drugs, I believe meth, and he kind of freaks out about it, and she's like, well, whatever, like. Was that real? Was that bit? Was that something that was tough to deal with? Yeah.
Yeah, that was very real. Everything that happens in the book is real. All that stuff is real.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know, like when I wrote it, I was like, can I get in trouble for this? But it's like anything, like, the worst thing that they're gonna do to me is tell me I can't be a caregiver anymore, I think. But it's like that was real. And like the England Swings song, I don't know if you guys listen to that Roger Miller song. That was real. We listened to that song all the time. And I wanted to like include that in the scene where it's like England swings like a pendulum do.
I liked
when I'm giving her, huh?
I liked when Big John was quoted. I love that song.
Yeah.
Big Bad John.
And those were all songs that we listened to. Like my client and I listened to those songs all the time. So they weren't like, those were songs that kind of permeated through our relationship.
That's
because
nice.
she was really into that old music, and she introduced me to a lot of it, and it's like, Big John and England Swings, and there's a lot of songs like that where I wanted to include them in the narrative, because they were such a big part of like our relationship with each other. So that was all stuff that
Mhm.
that we listened to often, like when I was caring for her.
Nice.
And it's just kind of, I mean, they're timeless songs now. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if anyone like young really listens to those anymore, but
Mhm.
I'm listening to Big John, but I'm not young, so I don't know.
yeah.
Well, this is he reads a lot of Dean reads a lot of Victorian literature, that's what he considers a real fun time,
Old-fashioned
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
is my bag. Yeah.
He enjoys that.
Oh yeah.
But let me ask you, the book has just come out a couple of weeks ago, so where can they get it?
Well, the main place people can buy it is on Amazon. I know that there's Amazon in the UK.
Mhm.
That's
Nice.
the main
Cool.
place to get it. There's local bookstores in Minnesota that sell it.
Okay.
Cool.
Um,
So if you're in
but
Minnesota,
if
you
you
got the bookstores.
if you're gonna walk into the bookstore in like Leicester City or something, like they're not gonna have it.
But
Awesome.
we can get it on Amazon, which is where most kind of books do seem to be being sold nowadays anyway. So
Yeah.
that's grand.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Cool. Well,
I
I'm
wish
glad
it
to
was-
go ahead.
I wish it was in bookstores, but it's not quite to that point yet. So
It's
Well,
just easier with Amazon, yeah.
It is.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you the same. We always ask everyone the same final question, and I don't give you a chance to prepare for it. But I like to know what authors are reading. So I ask if there's any book any existing book that you wish you had been the one to write. What would it be?
Well, my favorite book is very short. It's The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Mm.
I don't know if you read it. They made it into
No.
a movie. It's like a poetry book, but some of the things that he says are so profound.
Is it
that-
from is it from Iran, or where was I heard of the book.
Yeah. I think he was from. I want to say he was from the Middle East. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what his background is, but
Mhm.
they made it into like a children's movie
Oh,
with Liam Neeson,
Oh wow!
like narrating.
okay.
but it's like some of the stuff that book says, I'm like, God, I really wish that I could write like that, or I wish I would have written like
Okay.
that. But it's like the premise behind the book is it's a prophet, or it's a man that was imprisoned, and he's finally getting his leave to go back to his home country.
Okay.
And all the people in the town gather around him, and he's telling them like these things about life and stuff like that, and he's like kind of expounding this wisdom like Jesus or the Buddha or a prophet would, and it's very beautiful. So I mean it's not a long read. It's like more like poetry. I would definitely pick that book up because it's amazing. I mean,
Okay.
Oh, sounds
Yeah.
very intriguing.
Quite a unique answer. That's good. Well, Nick, thank you very much for calling in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And as we said, you can get Burn the City to the Ground and now on Amazon. Thanks very
All
much.
right.
Awesome.
Cool.
Take
Thanks,
care.
guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too, man.
Yeah.